Welcome once again to our midweek, not widmeek, but the midweek MIDrash that we are once again gathered together with our brother Herman as we are dissecting and going through Psalm 19, taking all the juice, all the marrow of this wonderful psalm to the best of our abilities as Yah would give us the wisdom to do, and we'll get into the details. I think we're just about up to verse 6 of this wonderful psalm, and again, we're so grateful that you've joined us here. And what's that, Mom? Something? Okay, Regina's looking away. Okay, let me make sure that the picture's looking okay.
Things look good on this end, Bob.
Yeah. Last week we had a little bit of an issue getting started, but so far everything I think is going to be Tovi. There we go. Oh, man. So before we get started, we want to make sure that Yah is involved to the fullest extent as he can, that we permit and we allow ourselves to take a back seat to what the Ruach would have us know in fullness. So, Gilbert, if you would do us the honors of opening in prayer for us tonight.
Yes, sir.
Oh, right.
Eternal and everlasting Father, whose perfect kingdom no sword is drawn, but the sword of righteousness, the strength known by the strength of love, so mightily spread abroad your spirit, that all people may be gathered under the banner of the Prince of Peace, as children of our Father, to whom dominion and glory be reign forever and ever. Amen.
Amen. Toda rabah. So we will begin with our brother Herman giving us a review of last week and a preview of what's to come this evening. Shalom.
Okay. All right, Bob. Well, thank you for the invitation once again. And hello, everyone. Let me get ready here. And as always, we are going to do a quick review. Bob, can you see that?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, folks. So this is some of the things that I shared last week, and I'd like to give you some highlights. So one of the things that I said was that the universe communicates an inaudible message that is seen and understood by mankind. The Lord has given us the mental capacity to perceive these things. So as I said, vision and cognition. Paul takes this concept and he links the cosmic communication to the worldwide gospel for all mankind. And we see that in Psalm 19, verse 4, and in Romans chapter 10, verse 18. And I really like the way Paul strings a number of quotes from the Tanakh to prove his point. Absolutely beautiful. In the poem, we see David transitioning from the universe, from the cosmos in general, and then he narrows it down to the sun in particular, the sun, the sun. The transition also includes going from couplets, which are two-liners, 1, 2, 1, 2, to triplets. So there is a transition in theme, as well as a transition in literary transition. David uses simile to liken the sun to a bridegroom and a strong man, and we're going to touch on the strong man in a little while when we hit on verse 6. Then I stated also that both the son and the groom, they leave their chambers in glory to begin a new day. Of course, the sun comes up in the east in the morning to begin a new day, and the bridegroom leaves. And the bridegroom leaves his marriage chamber to begin a new day as a married man. So both leave their chambers in glory to begin a new day. I also stated that there is a synonymous parallelism in verse 4, where it says that line has gone out through all the earth, their words to the end of the world. And I lined up the word pairs here, which are their line, their words, through all, to the end of the earth and the world. So when it comes to the synonymous parallelisms, you'll have this doubling of ideas, these word pairs. Keep an eye out for it because it's all over the Bible. Then I also stated that there is an ABAB structure in verses 4c and verse 5, where we have the word pairs here being the tabernacle, the ohel, and the chuppah. Here, of course, is inflected me chuppato, but the word here is the chuppah. So we have a complement, which is the tabernacle in the chamber, ohel, and the chuppah. And then we have B and B complement, which is the simile, like a bridegroom with the kaf preposition, and like a strong man. So we have the kaf preposition here and the kaf preposition here. So it would be ke chatan and ke gibor. So here we have a little beautiful AB structure. It was also stated last week that the sun proved to be too much for some people groups, ancient people groups, right? Because although they worship the sun god, Ra and Shamash, and sometimes you'll see Ra spelled as Re and Shamash spelled as Shemesh, but they were ancient deities that were worshipped. And although they worshipped the sun, as I stated, they were not enlightened. They were in spiritual darkness. And then I also stated that the heavenly testimony of the cosmos is not enough to know the Creator's will. What the cosmos communicates is that there is an eternal mind, a glorious mind behind creation, but it does not reveal the Lord's will on how we should live our lives. Of course, the Lord has put in man a conscience, but the cosmos does not reveal specifically the will. And this is why David follows up in the second section to reveal Yah's will. And we're going to get into that today. The second section, which is verses 7 through 14. Okay, so as I said today, we'll cover verse 6 and then verses 7 through 14. Bob, before I go into verse 6, is there anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, as we had hinted at with regards to the worship of the created things, as you remember, Paul says those people who are failing to accept Yah, whom they know in their hearts is real, but they fail to acknowledge him or give him thanks and hodu, and they worship and serve the created things rather than the creator.
Right.
Because it doesn't seem that we have to give account for our behavior when we just worship or serve something that is. Now, Yah is, but he's purposeful, and he directs and he guides and corrects. The Son doesn't do that. The Son can only be, and the Son is a shamish as well as a shemesh, is a servant. And as
Correct.
we see in Bereshit, the first chapter, verse 14, that the lights, the greater light, the sun, the lesser light, the moon, and the stars, were given a specific task of illuminating and glowing and directing mankind concerning the Moedim, the appointed times, for monthly reminders and for days and for years, all these things that on the fourth day, Yah did not bara these people. I mean, these spherical, celestial creations, but he assigned for them specific tasks. Okay? And So it's no wonder that man looks to that which is higher than them, looks to the mountains, creates deities out of the huge size of mountains, immensity, and then going beyond that to that which is above, worshiping the celestial host, um, especially the planets which move. The stars are stationary, but they notice that Venus is moving. They notice that Jupiter moves during the course of the season. So I have a few scriptures concerning that. And I go to Devarim, I go right to Torah, chapter 4, verse 19.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and Yah says, take heed, lest you lift your eyes to the Shemayim, to the heavens, and when you see the sun, the moon, and the stars, all the host of heaven, you feel driven to worship them and serve them. And again, the host of heaven, Yahuwah, the eternal Yah, is referred to as Yahuwah Tzvaot, the eternal one of hosts. So the armies. So we're looking at a competing army in essence. You know, we've turned that which was meant to benefit mankind into serving mankind, and for mankind to serve it. Yes,
Bob, I'm so glad that you mentioned that verse, because what we see here is that the Torah is warning Israel, do not do this. Don't do what the nations do. And this is exactly what we find in Psalm 19, that the Torah, the Lord's ways, warns us. And here is a good example where the Torah warns his people to do certain things and not to do certain things. So it's excellent. And I think I alluded to Deuteronomy chapter 4 last week, but I didn't read it, of course. But very good, a good warning.
I'll finish that in a second too. I
Yeah.
also wanted to also greet Hadassah. I see you there. Good evening and shalom to you. Great to have you with us. So interesting how this is worded. You feel driven to worship them and serve them. You feel driven. The lust, the what drives us, what motivates us. There's a lot of things that motivates us based upon how we feel and how we function in the context of our community. You know, if you're a big shot, you tend to elevate yourself, and so on and so forth. So if you see the stars and the host of heaven, and we feel driven to worship and serve them, and then it adds, which Yahuwah your Elohim has given to all peoples under the whole heaven as a heritage. So these lights are not exclusively yours or anyone's based upon our behavior and our development of our character, where those can only truly be Yah's when we keep his words and express our love for him by keeping his words. That those who appreciate the heavens are meant for us all to see. It's not an exclusive club for all the peoples. Yeah.
Yes, beautiful, because it says that it's given to those as an inheritance, right?
Yeah.
Because it has a role to serve us. And I hope to touch on some of the roles that the Son does in serving us, because it was created to serve. So as an inheritance for all under heaven. Yes.
Yes, it gives us the yom, it gives us the day. It gives us light and warmth.
Correct. And it also helps to orient us, because it's a very stable orb. It rises in the east, sets in the west, and it helps to orient us. It's a light that can orient us, but we're not to worship it.
And even the term to orient has to do with the light. When we refer to people of the Far East, we used to be able to refer to them as Oriental, but now that's apparently become a word that we shouldn't be using, although I don't see any racist connotations necessarily in that, except for these are the people of the East. But is given to all peoples under the whole heaven as an inheritance, as a heritage. So isn't I think it's beautiful that mankind, just as Bereshit, Genesis, the first chapter reminds us, that the light benefits all people. All people receive it as their heritage, and the duty properly fulfilled by those lights that were created to do just that. So far, we're seeing a perfect symmetry to the creation, to the creator. It's almost like photosynthesis, you know, how the sun shines on the green planet that creates chlorophyll and feeds itself as a response to the interaction with the sun. So we have an interaction with Yah. We also are not looking at the created thing, but the Creator who helps us to grow. And the Ruach is sort of an internal chlorophyll production in ourselves that we can grow to be our best and our greenest. And a couple of other verses I wanted to share also. In Devarim 17:3, it says, "Who has gone and served other deities and worshipped them, either the sun or moon or any of the host of heaven, which I have not commanded." So Yah gives us his specific instruction, whereas all mankind can gaze up to the heavens, even as David begins the psalm, and as we made allusion to the fact that the previous psalm, when David is hiding out in caves, avoiding the arrest and perhaps most likely murder by King Saul, he's sleeping under the stars, looking up at the host and realizing the perfect order of things and appreciating that order, as it says that it's our heritage to do so. That I can't go and tell Herman, don't look up there. That's my heavens, or laying claim to anything specific about it. But Yah has not commanded us to do this. And notice it's interesting that the way that he says it, that he has not commanded us to worship these things. It's done in a gentle way. I have not told you to go into the kitchen and touch the stove. I haven't told you to do that. I've been instructing you all the way. So maybe you should listen for the direction to do so. Enter the kitchen, and I'll give you how to do that. But I have not given you instruction to worship the host of heaven. And then I'm looking at Yeshayahu, Isaiah 47:13. Have a couple more quickies here. Isaiah 47, verse 13. "You are wearied in the multitude of your counsels." And that's true. We want to hear. Everyone has a voice. Everyone receives the light of the heavens, but there's different voices in response to why they are there, and can they guide us? Can the stars guide us, as the astrologers claim that they do, and have influence on our lives? It says, "Let now the astrologers, the stargazers, and the monthly prognosticators stand up and save you from what shall come upon you. Behold, they shall be a stubble, the fire shall burn them." So again, going into the kitchen, we can unescorted, uninstructed, novices as we are, we can get burned, and if we don't take respect. And again, you look at this an allegory of sports. You have to respect your opponent, even if you're ranked number 1 and they're ranked 200. There's always a chance that they can beat you. There's always that chance. So you have to respect your opponent. You have to respect. Doesn't mean you have to love them, but you have to respect them. You have to develop a strategy, regardless if they're the worst team around or not. So we have to be careful. They shall be a stubble. They are elevating themselves as monthly prognosticators, astrologers, stargazers. You're wearied in the multitude of your counsels. We're listening to all the wrong voices. We put on our go online and listen to all these rants about politics. We go this, we do that. And some of the stuff is stuff that we need to be aware of, sure. But sometimes we put all of our coinage on the table and push all on the table. We're betting with the house money, and I won't trust any individual. I'll trust that which can be proven. Prove all things and test all things. And Yah would not have said that if there were not times when we would be wearied by the multitude of counselors. Prove all things, test all things. If it's tov, it's tov. Okay, it's acceptable.
Right.
If it's not, it needs to be rejected. And that goes with people and our ideologies that develop over the years, over time. You are wearied in the multitude. And all these big shots, they're vying for your attention. Every one of them won't be here for very long. I have one more verse in Yirmiyahu 10. Jeremiah 10, verse 2. Okay, here's my voice doing tricks again. And Yirmiyahu says, thus says Yahuwah, thus says the eternal Yah, do not learn the way of the Goyim. Do not be dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the Goyim are dismayed at them. So there's a lot of things that upset the nations, the Goyim, the ethnos. A lot of things that upset people. A lot of people getting, but you know what? It's saying that's their territory. They haven't learned to fear me, so they fear everything but me. They fear the things that are created. I am in charge of things, and they fail to acknowledge that and recognize that. So they're afraid of everything else. They're afraid of their shadow. They're afraid of the things that would pursue them. And they look and there's nobody coming, but they still know that they're being pursued. So we have to make sure that we are not dismayed by things. And we see today with culture and race and all of these external issues that we don't get swept up in saying, yeah, you know what, we, whatever group that you represent, we've been mistreated or we've been looked down upon, or who is the we that we should be concerned about? The we of the Kahal Elohim, the community of faith that is in Yah. Yeah, we need to be aware of each other and truly form a brotherhood, truly realize that we are all who trust and have faith in Yah. We are all living stones of the temple of Yah. So yeah, we need to be concerned with each other, not about the things going on in the world, not over the stock exchange necessarily, or all these things that get everybody upset, or these political debates. We need to be wise. We need to be wise, yes, but that should not be our main issue. We should be aware of the devils and the demonic charge in the world. We respect. We know that they're wily. We know that they are capable of doing great harm and great damage. So we need to be aware of them, not blissfully unaware, being in ignorance without knowledge. We need to have knowledge. So we need to be aware of the enemy's strategies. So we do not show our dismay at the signs of heaven. What are the signs of heaven? And it's talking about astrological interpretation. It's not talking about meteors headed for the earth, in which we all should show a little concern about, but the astrological implications of your life. You know what that means? That means that you won't find love. That means that you need to do this and you need to do that. And of course, many of these cultures would take that to the degree of offering your children up to burn as sacrifices, or taking the virgin girls and offering them, throwing them into volcanoes or whatever. And so we are not dismayed enough to be pointed to that desperate action, or thinking that if we do something that horrendous, that we will gain favor with Yah. We do not get dismayed at the signs of the heavens. We realize that we are the recipients of what the heavens represent: light, goodness, and as we read earlier, that we acknowledge that they have been appointed to do these things. So we respect that, and we receive that. It's our inheritance to receive that light. And how wonderful it is that we have Yomim, we have days. We have light against the darkness. And how grateful it is, are we, that we have the working day. We can work, but there comes a time when night comes that causes it to come to a close. So that's just a few verses I wanted to share with regards to how some people can overreact. And as Shaul says in the first chapter of Romans, that some have actually worshipped and served the creation rather than the Creator, and even given them undue attention. People say, well, I don't worship it. Yeah, but you do give an unequal amount of time and effort into trying to resolve these enigmatic events, these enigmatic movements in the celestial heights. So I'll stop there.
Alrighty. Let me go back to the PowerPoint here. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to cover verse 6, and then we're going to go into the second section. We've already touched on many of the points that I was going to touch on, but nonetheless, let's read it. Okay, so it says in verse 6, its rising, referring to the sun, its rising is from one end of heaven, and its circuit, the course that the Lord has established for the sun, and its circuit to the other end, right? So from east to west. And there is nothing hidden from its heat. So, Miksei Hashamayim Motsao Ut Kuvato Al Ketzotam Ve'ein Nistar Me Chamato. I like this. It has a little ring to it. It has, take a look at this, folks. It says Motsao Ut Kufato Me Chamato. So it has a little ring to it, which I kind of like. Has that O sound. So as we said, right, the sun is depicted like a strong man coming out of his chamber, and he's going to run his course set out for him. He doesn't do his own thing. He follows what he has been created for, and he is faithful in his role, right? As we stated just a few minutes ago, he provides us with heat and with light, and also helps to orient us, because we know that the sun rises in the east, sets in the west, and it can help to orient us. So it is indeed a servant. It is stable, which is good. It doesn't do its own thing. All right. So these are beautiful things that the Lord, like these beautiful gifts that the Lord has given us in these heavenly bodies. And it's unfortunate that we often pervert the beautiful gifts that the Lord has given us. And Bob, you mentioned the astrologers and the astronomers, the astrologers and the stargazers and so on. And we often have a tendency of perverting the beautiful things that the Lord gives us. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. So here we find the sun giving light, of course, but the poet mentions another source of light, and that is the commandments of the Lord, which we will see later on. Alrighty, so we're going to enter into the second section of the poem, which is verses 7 through 14. We'll see how far we get.
Okay, can we go before we do that? Could I just
of course.
a couple things?
Of course.
Because talking about the circuits and
right, it's course. It has a course. It's like he's depicted like a runner running his course, the course that is set out for him.
Yeah, and there's nothing hidden from the heat of him, and the heat is the felt presence of Yah. Just like the sun, we feel its presence. We feel the presence of Yah. When we enter into covenant with him, we can actually feel him. And to run like a champion, the interesting thing is a champion is Gibor, which means giant, which means huge. Just like one of the names of Messiah in Isaiah chapter 7 prophecy, one of the names is El Gibor, El Most High, El Almighty, like El Shaddai is. So the champion
warrior
run its course. And as the bridegroom exits the chuppah, so is the strong man who runs his course, who knows and is familiar with what he needs to do, his course. He runs it with familiarity, but doesn't take it for granted. He moves forward and makes an advance. And so are we. We know what we need to do, and we advance. You know, the old thing is saying with the full armor of Yah listed in Ephesians does not have anything in the back, because we are always advancing, right? We're always moving forward. The gates of hell shall not prevail against our advance. So the warmth projects that level of success. I just want to read a couple more verses, if you don't mind, with regards to
go for it, of course.
This, okay. Ecclesiastes 1, 5, and 6. With regards to the run of the sun, and this is one of the things that, with regards to the prevalence of the flat Earth teachers, many who are believers that there is a definite arc. There's definitely a rising and a setting to come up again. So there is some sort of revolution of that arc of activity, and we only see the arc above. But it's like if you are at a high enough elevation and you look at a rainbow, did you realize that it's a full circle? The rainbow is a full circle. So if you're at the right elevation, you can see that full circle. And so for us, we see an arc. The sun also rises, and the sun goes down and hastens to the place where it rose. Okay, so it goes to the place where it rose. So again, that doesn't sound, anyway, I don't want to get into, because a lot of people are very sincere about that. But I want to go by what the word is saying. The wind goes toward the south and turns around to the north. The wind whirls about continually and comes again on its circuit. Again, the circuit is a circle.
Mm-hmm.
So we have east, west, north, and south being represented in the writings of Solomon. I also want to give attention to Hadassah, who makes mention of Deuteronomy 18:10. There shall not be found among you anyone who practices witchcraft, or a soothsayer, or anyone who interprets omens or calls up the dead. So yeah, there's a lot of warnings in there.
Yes.
I just wanted to focus on a couple of main ones. But yeah, Yadis doesn't whisper one little thing in the corner of the scripture, and that's all we need to do. And if we don't see that, we're going to be blasted. He gives us plenty of warning.
Bob?
Yeah.
Right. This is why I emphasize that the cosmos, just the cosmos alone, is not enough to know his will.
No.
This is why, because, and this is why David gets into the second section, because we get to know his will. But go ahead, please. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Not at all. Not at all. But yeah, that's exactly right. And why does he then talk about the law? Well, we're going to find out. People think of a natural or a naturalistic perspective of Elohim. Says, I don't go to church. I don't really read the Bible or anything, but I go out to nature and I love nature and I appreciate nature. And again, that's great. You appreciate the things that have the fingerprint of Yah, his creation. But we need to give honor to the Creator. We want to meet the Creator. I grew up watching Bob Ross make those paintings in 1.5 hour. And I look at those paintings, and I don't know how he managed to do all that in 1/2 hour's time. I would have loved to have met him. How did you do that? So it's important, and we tend to want to meet. We want to have interaction with the creators. One more verse actually, Psalm 113:3. From the rising of the sun to its going down, Yahuwah, his name is to be praised. His name is to be praised. And again, we did the teaching on the Aaronic benediction, where everyone agrees that the name, not his office, not his character, or but the name, the representative name. The name is to be praised from the rising of the sun to its going down. It's the full 24/7. Yahuwah is high above all the nations. His glory is above the heavens. As we know and we understand that there's at least 3 levels of the Shemayim, and he's the highest of the highest heavens of the Shemayim. Who is like Yahuwah our Elohim, who dwells on high? Who is like this guy? Who do we compare to? So again, when we think of the Creator, we're not just talking about Bob Ross here. We're not talking about Da Vinci or Van Gogh. We're talking about the Creator of everything.
Amen.
Out of ex nihilo, bara, out of nothing. Not out of, he didn't make a nice table and chair based with the good wood and the plane and the saw and the stain. He made it out of nothing. So how great is this Creator who invites us to know him, who invites us into his presence? How cool is that? I mean, that's pretty cool.
And not only that, he invites us to join the cosmos in praise and to testify, just like the cosmos testify, to testify of his glory. So he invites us for all of that. It's beautiful, this poem.
Verbally and non-verbally.
Right.
Amen. Okay.
All right. Okay, Bob, let me know, please, when you can see that. I'm going to talk about, let's begin the second section. This section opens up with a synthetic parallelism. Sometimes you will see it spoken of as an expanding parallelism. So the question is, what is a synthetic parallelism? Is it something that's fake, synthetic? No, it is not something that is fake. It's synthetic in the sense that it is a synthesis. It is a building, right? And as I mentioned last week, you have an initial premise, a main idea, and then that idea is built upon with certain elements. So this is what we have in this section here, and I'm going to share it. And I'm also going to share an example of another synthetic parallel. And I'm also going to give some homework too, so that you can, during the week, look up these verses and see if you can detect the synthetic parallelism there. So let's go on to the next verse, the next slide. All right, so here we have verses 7 through 11. 7 through 11. And this is what I mean about a synthetic parallelism. We have here the law of Yahweh, of the Lord, is perfect. And as you can see, I have it highlighted here. So the section starts out with a general term, the Torah, the Torat, Yahweh, a general term. And then it describes it as being perfect, being sure, being right, pure, clean, enduring forever, true, righteous. It also described it as something that should be desired over everything else and very valuable, because gold is valuable. And it describes it as something that is sweet, that can be a delight to our soul. And you mentioned this, Bob, right? It also warns us. The Lord's ways warns us. And Hadassah shared from Deuteronomy 10. You also shared how the Torah warns us against worshiping these celestial bodies. And then, of course, the section ends here, that it also provides a great reward when we follow it. So this is what I mean about a synthetic parallelism. You have the premise referring to the law, the Torah, Yahweh, the law, the Torah of the Lord, and then it builds on that, building, adding to it. So it ends with this statement that in keeping them, in observing them, there is great reward. So what is the reward? The reward is that it converts the soul. It returns, it allows the soul to return back to his creator, or its creator. It makes the simple person wise. And when we walk in his ways, we have a joy in our hearts, and it enlightens us. And this is what I meant about the poet talking about another source of light, which is the commandment. Just like the sun provides light, the commandment also provides a light. It enlightens our eyes, our minds. All right, so these are the rewards that we get from keeping, from guarding his ways. All right, and let's see. Of course, there's a warning. It warns us. That is another benefit, another reward. So this is an example of a synthetic parallelism, or an expanding parallelism. Let's go to the next slide. Here's an example. And this example is from Psalm 105, verses 8 through 11. Here's the premise. He remembers his covenant forever. There's the main idea, the premise. The word which he commanded for 1,000 generations. So he's building on it. The command is for 1,000 generations. The covenant which he made with Abraham, and his oath to Isaac. So we have for 1,000 generations, given to Abraham, given to Isaac, confirmed to Jacob for a statute, to Israel as an everlasting covenant, saying, to you I will give the land of Canaan as an allotment for your inheritance. So notice how it begins with the premise that he remembers his covenant forever, 1,000 generations. made with Abraham, given to Isaac, continue on with Jacob, everlasting, and then that it would be part of that covenant would be giving the land of Canaan as an inheritance. So this is an example, another example, and there are many, many throughout the scriptures. And so since there are many, I'm going to give a little assignment. And I'm hoping that you folks out there would take a look at this. It's only going to take a little while. So we have Deuteronomy chapter 10, verses 12 and 13. Look for the principal idea and see how that idea is built upon. And this is very important. Well, it's all important, of course, but a very important one in Deuteronomy 10, verses 12 through 13. The other one is in Proverbs chapter 3, 13 through 18. Once again, look for the principal idea and then look for the building blocks. Ready? Okay, so I may ask next week if the homework was done. All right, moving on. Let's take another look at this section here, verses 7 through 9, because it is written quite beautifully. And there is a pattern, which we're also going to check out the Hebrew as well. So there's a pattern here, and it's very obvious. So first of all, we have a regulation, which would be the law, the testimony, a statute, a command, the fear, and the judgments. So we have regulations. Then those regulations are given a quality. It's perfect, it's sure, right, it's pure, it's clean, endures forever, true and righteous altogether. So the regulation is given a quality. And you'll notice that I have color coding there. I'll get to that in a moment. Then it provides an action. It converts, it makes wise, it causes to rejoice, a person to rejoice, and so on. And it gives light. And then it talks about the object, the grammatical object, the receiver of that action, right? The grammatical object. So who receives it? The soul receives it. The simple person, let me get back here. The simple person receives the testimony to make him wise. The heart receives the statutes so that the heart can rejoice. The eyes receive it, receives that light, and so on. So I wanted to break it down this way so that you can see that there is a very systematic pattern in the poetry of regulation, a quality, an action, and the object, the receiver. Now, let's take a look at the color coding here. You'll notice that I have in green the law of, the testimony of, is, and is, because in the Hebrew this is singular. But then you also have the statutes of are, and then I'm going to jump down, the judgments are, because it's plural. And then of course you have the command, the commandment in singular, and the fear in singular. So what we have here, the structure is we have singular, singular, plural, singular, singular, and plural. So that is the way that this is written in the Hebrew. We're going to take a look at the Hebrew in a moment. You will also note in the Hebrew, you're going to notice that the eternal one, Yahweh, is the second word in this structure. So let's go to the Hebrew text and let's take a look at the Hebrew here because it's beautiful. So here we have, once again, the color coding, the same color coding, where we have Torat, go back here, Torat Yahweh, feminine singular, Edut Yahweh, feminine singular, Pikudei Yahweh, masculine plural, Mitzvot Yahweh, feminine singular, Yirat Yahweh, feminine singular, and Mishpatei Yahweh, masculine plural. And if you'll notice the pattern, notice the A, the Sereyod for masculine plural, the construct form. And as I said, you have the eternal one, the Yud Hey Wav Hey, as the second word in each line. Now, what I have here in the purple here, this line is called a makef. We have it in the third line and in the sixth line. And what the makef does is that it unites the two words, making it one word. So what we have here is 1, 2, 3, 4 words, because the makef unites these two words. It's like something in the English, like a hyphen, where two words are united. And here we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So notice the pattern. We have 5 words, 4 words, 5, 5, and 4. So the symmetry and the balance is absolutely beautiful, as well as the linguistic, the construct. And by the way, you'll notice that it is stated here, it's written as Torat, as opposed to Torah. We're used to hearing the word Torah, which is the absolute form. But the reason why it's Torat is because it's in the construct form. It is the law of, the testimony of, the commandments of, the judgments of. So these words are all in the construct form. Another example, we're used to hearing the word mitzvah, the commandment, but here it's mitzvot, in the construct form, the pathak tau construct, like here, pathak tau. So this is why the words are slightly different. You normally may not hear it as Torat. You'll hear it as Torah. You usually won't hear it as mitzvat. You hear it as mitzvah. But these are the construct forms of the word. All right, so I like the Hebrew really shows the symmetry and the balance of this section.
Amen. Hadassah makes the observation, it looks like a tower because it's all balanced perfectly.
It is balanced. And this is one of the beautiful things, one of the characteristics of Hebrew poetry, that there is often balance. Okay. All righty, moving on. Bob, before we move on, anything quickly you'd like to say?
Well, I think your overview is good because I want to go into what it means to be perfect, what it means such.
Yes, we'll get into that. Yes. Okay.
But
all righty. So the next slide here, I'm not going to dwell on this, but I wanted to show it and present it for those that want to go more in depth. You can pause the video and you can analyze the parts of speech, because there is what you call of course you have parallelism, but there is also grammatical parallelisms. And I just want to present this here for those that want to go more in depth with the parts of speech. Alrighty? But I highlighted this here because this is another characteristic of Hebrew poetry. You're going to have a pattern. Like, for instance, here you have a participle, a noun, participle and a noun, participle and a noun, participle and a noun, participle and a noun. And look what happens here. A perfect verb and an adverb. Why? Because this is one of the characteristics of Hebrew poetry. You'll have a pattern, and then you'll have a change to indicate to the reader that there is a new section that is coming. And this is why I said before that you'll see many times couplets, and then a triplet. Right? Two lines, and then a triplet. That change in the structure will communicate to the reader that something else is coming. There's a transition coming. And for this poem, it's this that is coming. This information that we're receiving here that is very different. The structure is very different from what we have seen previously. So keep an eye out for that, folks. Keep an eye out for that. When you are reading, and if you're keeping an eye on the poetry, and you see a pattern, a definite pattern, and then you see a change, that's gonna be a hint that there is something coming, a change in the poem. Alrighty? So for you guys that are into grammar, Here are the grammatical parallelisms in the parts of speech. Okay, and here we have the text. And Bob, what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to read this verse, and then I'll turn it over to you so you can share on what you stated, being perfect, being sure, and so on. Okay? Alrighty. So it says here, the law of the Lord, the law of Yahweh is perfect, converting the soul. The testimony of Yahweh is sure, making wise the simple. Torat Yahweh temimah me shivat nafesh. And you'll notice that I put this in green because this is in pause. This word is normally nefesh, a segulate noun. But since it is in pause because of the Athanak, the first segol is heightened to a kametz. So it would be nafesh as opposed to nefesh. So let me read that again. Torat Yahweh temimah me shivat nafesh. Eidut Yahweh ne emana machkimat peti. And there again, once again, because of the siluk, this syllable is stressed, peti. All right, Bob, so I'd like to turn it over to you, and you can share regarding this concept, and I'll share as well after you. Okay, so I'm going to close this, and you can take it from here. Thank you for your attention, folks.
Amen, amen, amen. And again, the Torah of Yahweh is perfect. And, people who dismiss the importance of Torah in the New Covenant fail to acknowledge that the prophesied Brit Chadashah given in Yirmiyahu and Jeremiah is to be given to the house of Yehuda and the house of Israel, both the northern and the southern kingdom, that will be joined together once again in fulfillment of Scripture with the fulfillment of the Brit Chadashah. Okay?
Bob, just quickly, it's sad. It's sad that the Christian church has developed such a negative outlook on the Torah, because Torah's instruction, and any loving parent, any loving father, any loving mother will always teach their children out of love. And that's all it is. It's the Lord's ways. It's the way that He instructs us. And it's for our own good anyway. It's for our own good. And it's unfortunate that the church has had such a negative outlook on the Torah.
Amen. I don't know. I'm hearing my name here. I'm hearing my voice twice. Okay.
I don't hear it twice. I hear it. There's no echoing.
It stopped. Okay. All right. So, tamim is the word for perfect, and it is to be complete, to be whole. And again, we should not add to nor subtract from Torah. It is given to us as instruction. We don't modify. We don't need to haggle about its far-reaching effects. It is. Just as I am that I am. I will be who I will be.
Amen.
Okay? So it's complete. It's also sound and full. There's a completeness to it. So it's perfectly sound. It's not in a state of flux developing into soundness. It is sound. It is full. Even as Messiah said, I came not to destroy or to tear away from Torah, but to fulfill, but to give the fullness of that. And it's prophesied of Messiah that He would elevate Torah, not dismiss it. And obviously, when we read some of Paul's writings, remember Simon Peter said that some people distort the writings of Shaul to their own destruction, their own detriment, because he says some things that are kind of hard to grasp. And, to this day, there's certain things that, that we need to fully understand. Also, there's a sense of being undefiled, that it is pure, like an offering is pure, without spot or blemish. And so that's the idea of perfection. And that Yah desires that we walk in perfection. We see 3 examples in Bereshit chapter 6, verse 9. Genesis 6:9 says, Noah was a just man, perfect in his generations. Noah walked with Elohim. So walking, the idea of to walk with is halakha, which is the way that we put our faith in action, the way we put instruction into action. Instruction is meaningless if it's not heeded to, learned from, and engaged. But it stays in a frozen state. It needs to be lived. It needs to be active. Just like it's like agape love is active love, is love in action. It's not specifically poetic and just kind of. It is action. It is a verb. Okay, so he was perfect in his generation. And why? Because he walked with Elohim. He walked with Yah, which helps us in that perfection, in that development, in that sense of completeness. And as we talked about earlier about don't be upset by the things of the world because they're in an incomplete state. They're looking for something to fill in the empty shelves. For the believer, our shelves are stocked full. We've got what we need. All our needs are to be met. Sometimes we hit a situation, a crisis might develop, in which it requires a little extra filing, a little more extra. But generally, our shelves are stocked. We're not missing things. So the things of the world do not upset us. Specifically, the things that upset them do not or should not upset us. Like if you were an Eagles fan this weekend, oh, my Eagles, they lost. It's terrible. I'm going to be depressed because they lost the Super Bowl. And say, come on. There's not one person on that Eagles staff, players or coaches, that even know that you exist. But Yah knows that we exist. He walks with us, and that's how we can be complete, that we can walk with him. Bereshit, Genesis 17:1, Abraham, walk before me and be blameless. Again, walk before me. Walk in step with me. Just like Adam walked with Yah in the Ruach of the Yom. He walked in the cool of the day, but he walked in the Ruach of the day. And when Adam had sinned, he wasn't walking with him. So his sin, Yah walked through the garden saying, oh, okay, something's up. Where are you, Adam? Where are you, Adam? Because he walked with Yah. He walked with Yah. Okay? And now he can't because he's guilt-ridden. So walk before me and be blameless. Be perfect. So can we be blameless? Of course we can't be blameless. Well, Yah tells us the Brit Chadashah, the Messiah died for our sins, nailed them to the cross. All those sins are done away with. In our state of believers, are we still sinners? Oh, I'm a sinner, saved by grace. I'm still flawed. I'm still unholy. Well, you don't understand the conditions of the Brit Chadashah. We've been given the sense of being full, of being blameless. We mess up from time to time, but it's not engaging in an adulterous affair. It's not a case of bombing somebody's office, or it's not a case of stealing somebody's car. That's not the slight transgression that we do is, oh, I forgot to call you back. Oh, I wasn't thinking clearly. Oh, I got upset because somebody cut me off on the highway. So it's a momentary lapse of reason. It's you get right back to it where you need to be. And the book of Shemot, I'll go right to the text here because we're almost running out of time. Exodus 12:5. Your lamb shall be without blemish. Your lamb shall be without blemish. And of course, that's talking about Passover lamb. Shall be without blemish. So we're running out of time. I'd say 29. So maybe we can you can make a comment based on that. And, we'll continue next week. Is that okay?
That's fine. Yeah, we'll continue next week. Continue. Yeah, that's fine. I'll share a little bit about the purpose of the law there. Yeah, again, Paul was not anti-Torah, not at all. He just wanted to show certain things. The law has its purpose. It has its purpose, and I'll share a little bit about that next week, its purpose. But yeah, continue, please.
Right. Okay, so we'll close it down for now. Any final thing you wanted to share or
Yep,
stay outside of
I
that?
do. I do. Don't forget the homework, folks. Okay,
Yes.
look into that. Look into those passages in Deuteronomy and in Proverbs. Keep an eye out for all of these literary devices. When you look for these things and you see them, whether they're antithetical parallels or synonymous or chiasms, that's going to help you to really, really slow down, look at it, and it's going to stick in your mind because you're going to have to slow down and chew on it and look and think it through. So it's a good way of learning scripture, and it's also beautiful. So please remember the homework. Remember the homework. Check it out. And maybe next week, a few of you can comment and you can let us know what you thought about those synthetic parallelisms.
Amen. Amen. All right. Praise Yah. Praise Yah. Each step that we do, we're walking in a specific direction. We're not aimlessly bopping around. May Yah will bless and keep us all here. Amen, Hadassah. Thank you so much. Thank you. And again, check in with us next Wednesday evening at 7:30 p.m. And in between, we will be here, Yah willing, on Sabbath morning at 11 a.m. In the Sabbath keeping process, and we will be doing some interesting subjects over our assembly. So again, we thank you for joining us, and there's a lot here. There's a lot here. So I just pray that your patience with us, and we thank Yah for your attending to us. So let me just closing in prayer. Abba, once again, I thank you for those who would be checking us, if not live, that later on tonight or into the week, we would check in with each other and would see that this is timeless information. But it is also time sensitive in that we need to be aware. We need to learn. We need to develop. We need to become full. We need to become the people that you need us to be. Complete, blameless, and perfect, Abba. Working towards that, as we are not completed, but we are in the process. Because you who began a good work in us will carry it onto the completion, which comes when you return, when we will be resurrected and perfected. But we thank you, Abba, for all your goodness, all your mercies. We thank you for your Torah. We thank you for this wonderful psalm, and I thank you so much for the Quinones family, for all their helpers, for Stephen and his help the other night with my laptop, and Herman and Gladys. I pray for his dad and his sisters, and for us, that we are able to keep going. I pray for Gilbert and all of y'all. I'll be here for too long if I mention everyone, but yeah, you know those who are yours, that you watch over us and keep us safe, keep us faithful, and keep us encouraged. We thank you for that, Father. We thank you for these verses that you give us, that we have the opportunity and the freedom to look deeper into them, Abba, that we're not in trouble with anyone, not yet anyway. So we give you thanks for this evening, and we just pray that you continue to work in us and perfect us, Abba. And we thank you for this and for all things. We give you praise, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen and amen.
Amen.
So we will say for now, Laila Tov U'Lehitraot, and we will see you soon. And again, you can always check us out. If you're new to this, we have a few episodes in the other direction where you can catch up with us and get a full glance at this wonderful psalm. And we thank you, and we say shalom, shalom, Laila Tov, and be well, my brothers and sisters. Amen and amen.
Good night, everyone.